Okay. We love dancing to the songs. Hey, my friends, it's Andy coming live from Southern California on the Falco Canine Dog Talk. And we're going to be talking about, is my dog detection dog's sniffer broken? And for those of you that were watching yesterday or the day before, I can't remember now, when I got all the phone calls from my daughter during the show, this is a redo. So those of you that are watching this for the first time or listening on the podcast for the first time, sorry for that little bit of disclaimer, but I did attempt to do this one other time and it wasn't in the cards. But it's kind of a good thing because I added some features to this one to kind of help with the discussion in regard to whether your dog's sniffer is broken if you have a detection dog, because you can have that time where you have trained your dog to find a specific odor, whether it's a narcotic, explosive, bed bug, cell phone, arson detection, termite detection, and I could go on. Peanut detection, cancer detection. We've trained all those kinds of dogs, and E. coli, salmonella detection dogs. And right after training, everything seems to be perfect. You've trained the dog through repetitious training and consistency with a good handler, right? And you have a fresh handler who's doing everything that you told them to do, he or she, and the dog, as you're leaving, in most cases, tends to be doing the job. Now, they're rookies and they have a long ways to go. And then you go through certification. Usually the first certification is a very simple certification. I wouldn't say that it's a gimme, but you don't want to necessarily go crazy with all kinds of explosions going on and lights and sirens and alarms going off, that kind of stuff. You would save that for another time. And usually you would do that in training. And then in some cases, like my training, the second year and third year of certification, we actually add more components. We make it more difficult and make sure that you can certify under extreme circumstances. We have you search with 10 people in a room that only fits maybe 20 people, and you'll put 10 people in there and have the dog and the handler search around, people bouncing tennis balls while you're searching. So that kind of thing should continue, but we normally don't do all that on the very first certification. We want you to get you out in the street so the dog begins to be exposed to the real environment and problem solve and fix things as things go. But in most cases, what you want is training, and then the very first certification, and then real life will begin to shape a professional detection dog team that can perform under almost any circumstances. Just like you starting a job for the first time, you're not great on the second day, the third day, even the second week or third week. It takes a while to kind of learn where things are, how the computer operates, where the file cabinets are, and how you find things, and where the pencils are, where the pens are, how to drive a car. And when I became a police officer, the very first 15 car stops, I kept having to go, okay, before I pull the car over, I have to make sure I'm in an area that I know. I got to try to stop the vehicle in a well-lit area. I have to give the plate before I pull the vehicle over. That way, if there's a shooting and the car takes off, we have the plate. I have to make sure in my mind's eye, kind of get an idea what the car looks like, if there's any features like a bumper sticker, that kind of stuff. And then I call on the plate. Now I have to use my, phonetics, for the license plate, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo for the license plate. So I pull over the car, 1 Echo, Charlie, Delta, 543, right? And you're trying to remember that. And then when you pull the vehicle over, you want to offset your vehicle. So that gives you protection when you're up there contacting the driver. You want to turn your wheels so that your wheels are turned. That'll provide some protection if the guy gets out of the car and starts shooting. You have now the wheels turned sideways. That way, if they're skipping off the ground, they're not going to hit you in the feet or the legs. And then you begin to see, do you see what I'm saying? There's a lot. And then pretty soon, 6 months later, a year later, you're making a car stop and you think, none of those things, right? Your muscle memory kicks in, your ability to pull over a car with a little bit more focus on actually just the driver and not all the steps to get there. And everything seems to get better. So I hope I explained it. Same thing with the dog, right? The dog, when you're first training the dog, he doesn't know he's a narcotics dog. He doesn't know he's a bomb dog. He doesn't know he's a bed bug dog. He knows that searching for a specific odor, if he finds the source, and he performs a certain behavior, he will get his reward. He'll get the toy, or in some cases, food. We're going to stick with the toy just to make it easier, because that's how I primarily do it. So you're going to make sure and do this. And this is very important. You're going to make sure, and of course, you have your imprint and odor, or whatever that is, okay? Odor or odors. In the case of narcotics, it's marijuana, methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin. But in California and some other states, you're going to take out the marijuana. So it's just methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin, and then some of the derivatives. But those are the odors. That's the imprinted odor. And you want it to make sure that that is it. There's nothing more. The primary odor of methamphetamine, the primary odor of cocaine. Why do I say primary odor? Because cocaine and methamphetamine are often cut with something else, right? There's an additive in there, some type of powder, some type of other substance, but in the middle of all that is your primary odor. You don't want the dog to find, say, baking soda. You don't want your dog to alert to, what else is there? I can't think of anything off the top of my head at this moment, but there's other stuff that it's cut with, right? And just for instance, like talcum powder, right? Talcum powder looks a lot like cocaine, but you don't want your dog alerting on talcum powder. You want him to alert to cocaine, the substance of cocaine, the illegal substance, not the legal substance, the illegal substance of cocaine. And that is what the imprinted odor is. You want to make sure that that's always the same. I'm going to talk about how human odor and plastic baggies and all that kind of stuff affects it, but you want to make sure the imprinted odor is that thing. Bed bugs, live bed bugs, not dead bed bugs, right? Live bed bugs, not dead eggs, but live eggs. Viable eggs is what we call it in the business. So you have live bed bugs and live or viable eggs. Those eggs that can hatch and then have tiny little bugs coming out. Those things, right? Live, living. Not dead. We want the dog to ignore dead. Why in a bed bug detection dog? Because we want to be able to search and locate live bed bugs after we service or fumigate the area, hopefully killing all the bed bugs. We bring the dog back in to search for any living bed bugs. The dog has to learn to search through the dead carcasses of all the bed bugs that were killed, right? Because they don't get vacuumed up. They die sometimes in the wall. They sometimes die in the electro outlets and all the other places. So understand this, that your imprinted odor is a very specific odor. You don't want it to be anything else other than that specific odor. Understand? All right, so then you have the 3 steps in between. You have the dog has to learn how to sniff, right? A proper searching behavior, sniffing the cracks and crevices of where the dog is going to find the odor he's been trained to find. And so that will be different based on what kind of dog you have, what kind of discipline you have, whether it's a bomb dog, a narcotics dog, a bed bug dog, a peanut detection dog, an E. coli, salmonella detection dog. That sniff, the way that sniff goes, will be different based on each dog. All right. So the sniff is the activity of sniffing for that thing, right? And then the dog has to locate the source. Why is that important? Because a dog can sniff and smell odor, but it does us no good unless he takes us to the source of that odor, especially in a bed bug detection dog. Would it be any good if a dog went into a 2-story home necessarily and walked in and sat in the middle of the room and said, "I smell bed bugs," right? Because if it's an attached building, so you have maybe a townhome or 2 residences are attached together, the odor of the bed bug may be actually coming from the other home, not the one that it's in. How does that work? Well, the odor can be getting into the air conditioning ducts. It could be getting into a common wall where the one building has the air conditioning on, which causes pressure inside that building, pushing the odor into the building, the other residence that doesn't have the air conditioning off. Maybe it has doors open or windows open, so you have a negative pressure. So the positive pressure is pushing the odor into the negative pressure residence. And so a dog could very well come into the residence where there's no bed bugs and actually smell the odor and indicate. So just going into a room and indicating doesn't do us any good. We want the dog to go to source. So what we want the dog to do is now sniff around. Okay, the dog picks up an odor. Now the dog wants to find the strong odor, and he's sniffing around, and he goes to the common wall, the electrical outlet, sniffs it, and then gives us the indication. That will give us information, right? That gives us the information that, the dog's alerting on the common wall. That doesn't necessarily mean the odor's in this room. It means that we have a little bit of work to do. And so you see what I'm saying? That helps us even more so than the dog just simply coming in and sitting in the room. And so we want the dog to take us to the source, locate the source, and then give us the trained indication. Very simple, right? This is very simple. I go into courts all over the United States, all over Canada, and testify in court cases. And I say, the job of the detection dog is very simple. We train the dog the imprinted odor. He sniffs and tries to locate some odor. Then once he does, then he tries to go to the source. Once he finds the source, if he finds the source, then the dog gives the trained indication, which in most cases is a sit. In 90% of the cases of the detection dogs, it is a sit. And then the dog sometimes is given the reward. That's why they're in red, right? Red is, this is really important. And then the red and the reward is to remind me to let you know that not always does the dog get the reward in the real world. And we're going to talk about that later on too. So the thing that does remain the same always is the sniff, locating the source, and indicating. Those are the three musts. Those are the three musts. Imprinted odor, making sure that that's mandatory. And then the reward itself, maybe I should have made it green or blue or something like that, is sometimes we give them a reward, sometimes we don't. It depends on the situation, right? This is very simple. If you stick with that, that is very simple. So how does our dog Sniffer sometimes appear to become broken? It's because of us quite often, not always. But I'm going to say primary, it has to do with slappy. It has to do with sloppy handling and training, And this is a really, really common thing. I generally can fix most problems if I can identify where the sloppy handling is or the training is sloppy. That is where the handler becomes too involved in the search, where the handler gets impatient, or the handler tries to help the dog too much, and the dog becomes too used to it. And now you have what it tends to happen is now the handler's influence, where the handler believes the hidden substance may be, now becomes an issue, because now the dog is beginning to look at the handler for help. All right, so I'm going to go back here, and you may not hear me for a second. I'm going to go ahead and take this banner off, and I'll take this off. I'll just take this off just so it's not a distraction. So and I'm going to show you a video in a minute of a dog searching. So if we tell the dog to search and the dog's sniffing and he's going up and say, this is a place where the dog sticks his nose here, goes back into the ground, comes back up and sniffs here, goes back down, comes back and sniffs there, and does that on his own, that's the best thing that can happen, right? But if as a handler, we're walking backwards and we are directing the dog, and he goes up and directing the dog here, and then we think, right, in our mind's eye, in whatever, maybe we know where it's at. Maybe we know that it's inside this red pen, right? And so we go search, and we now start tapping, and this can lead to really bad habits, right? We go, come on, buddy, tip, and then we come here, where is it, right? You see, that's a distinct difference than when I did this. Here, where is it? And that, I'm exaggerating, but I can see it on videos all the time. And now what you've done, it's not the first time, maybe not the second time, but quite possibly the third or fourth time you're doing that. You are now putting emphasis on something. The dog comes up here and actually smells it because you've done a good job of training initially. And now the dog goes, wait, I smell that. But he really, she really kind of tapped here a lot, and her voice changed. And it was like really encouraging. And so what happens over a period of time of repeating that is now you've added to this thing. In the middle of the sniff, you've added something than just the sniff. It's sniff and wait for mom or dad to kind of really show you some emphasis on something. So now you've added something, right? You've added something to the mix. And the dog will begin to kind of get lazy, or the dog will begin to depend on it. Just as easy as it is to train the dog the imprinted odor and how to find that imprinted odor, it's just as easy to add something. Why? Because again, the dog does not know it's a narcotics dog. The dog does not know it's a bed bug detection dog. He does not know. Right? All he knows is that he needs to find imprinted odors and then get a reward. Imprinted odors and get a reward. Now, if you add something to it, that will become part of the mix. If it's something with you in your voice and in your hand tip and that kind of stuff, the dog will go, I just need to wait, because he'll show me where it's at. And so what ends up happening now, let's say it's in the screen pin. And so now you don't know what's in that green pin. You will come along and you will go, last 5 times I was at Andy's training facility or Fred's training facility. He likes to put in this red pin. So now you just completely skip this green pin. The dog will sniff the green pin, goes, well, there's some odor there, but dad didn't say, where's the pin? Where's the bugs, right? Or where's the narcotic? He did nothing there. So now he goes, I smelt it, but he didn't react. But he is reacting over here. And this seems to be more prevalent. And I seem to get more reward more often when he does that thing. The dog will sit here and there's nothing there. You see how you've added something to the mix that now can cause the dog to have some confusion. And now you will begin to believe your dog's sniffer is broken, when in fact it was you who taught the dog something else. The dog is actually correct in the sense that you've taught him to do that. Just as easy if you taught the imprinted odors and how to find the imprinted odors. Now you've added another component, and that becomes one of the things the dog searches for and begins to alert to is now when you influence, when you've added an emphasis at some point during your search. Maybe you also slow down. Maybe you shift your body. Maybe you're normally kind of hunched over, but when you get to the place where you might think something is, you begin to stand up. All right. So I'm going to share you a story with you before I show you the video of a dog searching. And that is, I was asked to go certify nearly every dog that was in all the airports where the planes took off in 9/11. So the different airports where three different planes, right? 3 or 4. I can't remember now. I should remember because the most important thing that's ever happened in our history. But that's, whatever the airports. So you had LaGuardia, I think, and you have JFK, and you have a number of airports. So they took all the dogs that were bomb dogs, and they met me and another trainer, certifier, in Connecticut. So we had something like 50 dogs join us in Connecticut. I can't remember. Like I said, it wasn't all the dogs that worked all the airports, but it was a large number of them. 50 dogs. Now, there's been enough time. I can probably tell the story a little bit more freely. Sometimes I try not to tell you when it was or where it was. I just say, hey, one time I was asked to certify 50 dogs. Well, I'm here to tell you it was all the dogs that worked the airports where the 9/11 planes flew out of before they crashed in the buildings, the Pentagon, and in the field in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, I believe it was. And so all these dogs meet us in Connecticut. We're there for 4 days and 3 days, 3 or 4 days. I can't remember. And myself and the other trainers, I have videotape of all this. It's somewhere in one of my boxes in the rafters of my garage. And we have classroom. We're talking. They're asking questions, that kind of stuff. We're telling them what we're going to do. We're going to spend a day of work, of training, seeing where all the dogs are and where they're at in their searching behaviors, and the handlers and their handling of each one of the dogs and their habits and their searching patterns and all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to go through a day of training. Well, we had it didn't take long to figure out we were in trouble, because we had a pound of C4, a pound of C4. A pound of C4 is a lot. So it could be like this, I think, somewhere around there. I've had a half a pound of C4 is probably something like this, and I would say a pound, somewhere in that. But that's a lot, right? You would think a dog would be. I'm going to talk about the power of a dog's nose, but this is actually pretty simple, right? And let's just say it's this. We'll just say a pound it's maybe a little bit more than this. A pound of C4. So we have, I don't know what it was. I want to say like 20 cinder blocks. A cinder block, of course, is a cement that's kind of square, and there is a hole in the middle of it. If you were to lift it up like this, you would see a square hole about like this size, right? 4 inches by 4 inches, something like that. And then we were using the doubles. And so you had a piece of cement in the middle, and you had another one. So just to make sure, I want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out. So nice catch, Andy. And so if you're looking down on it, this is what we had. It was a block like this. All right. And then a block here, a hole here, and then a hole here. This is not to scale, by the way. And in one of the things, we would put the pound of C4. Right? And then there would be 20 of those laid on the ground, and there'd be some space in between. All right. And so you have a pound of C4 in one of those holes, and then you have these other blocks that would kind of come over here, right? And then they're all over the place. Sometimes they'd be in a line, sometimes they'd be in a circle, that kind of stuff. So you have a pound of C4, and you could actually see the C4 in there, right? And so one at a time, we had the teams come through, and I videotaped. And again, I have this all on videotape. I may share it at some point. I've kept it under. Oops, sorry about that. I could have got rid of that. There we go. Sorry. And so here we go. We have a pound of C4 inside one of those cinder blocks. And again, there's nothing over the top, so they can see that it's in there. And so the first time we went through it, out of the 50 dogs, because they don't know us, and they didn't know me or Bob or Billy. I think Billy was there too. So there's 3 of us there. I'm not going to tell you who the others were. They're some of the. I'm going to say this, but don't want you to get the wrong impression of what I'm trying to tell you. So the 3 top detection dog trainers, at least in the United States, 3 of the top 10 were there. Myself and then 2 other guys. Let's just put it that way. And maybe top 5 to tell you the truth. And so they don't know us. They just know that we know what we're talking about and all that kind of stuff. And so some handlers began to change their behavior. And out of the 50 dogs, I think only 10 of the dogs actually alerted on the C4. Why does that happen? It happens because people tend to change their behavior in front of people that they don't know, or that we're watching them and we know something, right? So out of the dogs, a very small percentage of the dogs found the C4, even though they could see that it was inside there. They would often have to turn around and come back and get their dog to actually sniff it. Then they would start leaning down forward and they would start tapping and say, "Where is it, buddy?" And then the dog would eventually sit. Very strange, right? And we're going, wow, these are all the dogs. And yeah, feel free to comment. I got one comment here who's watching. Hey, Facebook. Good job, men. Thank you. Oh, you're talking about all of us. And so somebody's on a group. Somebody's watching this on one of the private groups. And thank you for watching. I appreciate that. All the rest of you, I see there's a lot of people watching. So just go ahead and comment and say hi. I'm on 4 different Facebook pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. All right. So out of all the dogs, 50 dogs, again, I can't even tell you, but it was a very small percentage, maybe 10, maybe 50. It was not very many. So we're looking at each other like every dog should have alerted that. It's a pound of C4 in a cinder block on a very still day in a parking lot in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, there were many, I'm just going to add this to it, there were many handlers who had dust and dirt on their uniforms and their boots. Why? Because they were all on ground zero when they weren't there with us, right? They had just come. Some just drove from ground zero, from the building in New York that got toppled, the Twin Towers, and were there with us. And so we're talking 9/11. We're only talking weeks after 9/11. It was then and there and during the whole thing. And out of all that, only found the dogs they can see. Hey, Corinder, nice to see you. And so we go, okay. And so we go, hey, why don't we cover them up and really see where something's wrong? Let's see, there's something wrong. Even if they knew where it's at, they still had to get to the point where they started having their dogs find it. And so by the time we were done with it exposed, every dog had finally alerted on this because we told them, hey, just get your dog to alert on it. We don't know what's going on here. That's C4. This is good C4. It's like fresh C4. And why not? Why isn't it? So we got every dog to alert on it. So then we covered and we moved it around. So now this block was not where it was before. We moved it and we covered them up. What we did is put paper towels in every one of the holes. So this one wasn't the only one that had the paper towel, right? This had paper towel, this had paper towel, that had paper towel. All 15 to 20 blocks had a paper towel in the hole in a position that you could not tell which one had the C4. Guess how many out of the 50 dogs found the C4? And you would be right if you said 0, because I'm not going to wait because there's a long delay. 0 of the dogs found the pound of C4 in the cinder block. A very easy search, right? It wasn't in a bunch of luggage. It wasn't contaminated. We had no distractions in the other blocks. We didn't have tennis balls in other blocks. We didn't, nothing, right? It should have been so easy because you could put sometimes anything in a hole and it's not the trained odor and the dogs will learn on it because it's different. It's the hole that's different. And the dogs go, well, I guess this is what they want me to find. And the dog will sit. But out of the 50 dogs, not one dog alerted to the C4. All right. And so this began a really long day on the very first day because we got a problem, Houston. At some point, we were at 0. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, you've heard the story before. Or you just knew. And so one of the things we found also in the video for the dogs that once we eventually told them where it was at, even when it was exposed, we found a dog. This is just one example. Every dog in handler had a different thing that would go through. One of the, Ray, can you bring me the black leash, please? The black leash that's behind the door that goes out into the backyard. I'm gonna show you one. This was one of the most intriguing things that sometimes we will have a habit. Now, remember my explanation of that we will say, find it. Come on, buddy, find it. And then the dog alerts, right? That's pretty obvious. We can see that. It's very clear. We can have, something where, somebody changes their entire body positioning or something like that, right? But in this case, it was thank you, Ray. It is very unusual that we could not figure it out. And so sometimes handlers will hold the leash and they'll bring up the handle up to their hand. And then of course, this part's attached to the dog. And so we had this one handler that we were watching, and let me see if I can bring it. So as pretend he's down a little bit lower, right? The dog is searching, and then what happens is the dog would come to this cinder block, and the handler would do this. It took us a while. He would do that with his leash. When he'd do that, the dog would sit. It took me probably 10, I don't know how many times to watch the video to try to figure it out because we couldn't figure out why his dog was sitting, but he wouldn't sit anywhere else that we had the explosives, right? Only where the handler knew where the explosives was, did he do this. Why did he do this with his leash? Because at that point, he wanted to be able to get distance from his dog. And that is a way of sometimes proofing that your dog is on explosives. But what inadvertently happened is the dog learned to see that thing. And then when that would happen, that was why the dog sat. The dog was not, let me go back to, let me clear this out. So let me go back to this not graphic, but let me just go to these words here. And so it was no longer about the imprinted odor. Do you see? The handler had been working with the dog, maybe with sloppy training for such a long period of time in the real environment without fixing this problem, that it no longer I keep looking up here for the imprinted odor. It's on the screen. It no longer became about the imprinted odor. If I were to block this out, it was about sniffing and then waiting for the handler to drop the end of the leash, and then the dog would sit, and then the handler would reward him. And so the reward was teaching the dog to sit when the handle dropped and began to do this. It took, and I have it on video, and it when I discovered it and went to Billy and Bob and said, oh my gosh, something's wrong with their training. And they were all from different cities, right? And all different environments. Now, you didn't all train together, but there becomes this very lackadaisical, I'm going to go ahead and put this back up again, this very lackadaisical, sloppy handling and training that kind of creeps into training sometime, where you allow these other bad habits to get into the way. And without having a third party watching you and paying attention to what it is you're doing, these things can begin to creep in and become a really, really big problem. So we had 50 dogs from the airports that all the planes out of 9/11 flew out of. None of them could find a pound of C4 in any of the cinder blocks. When we went to go do, I mean, we had a schedule, right? We had day 1 of training, day 2 of certification prep, and then day 3 of certification. Not one dog passed certification, and only one dog out of the 4 or 5 scenarios actually alerted to one of the explosives on one of the scenarios. That was it. Only one dog found one of the explosives in one of the scenarios, and they had to pass all 4 of the scenarios. So none of the dogs passed, but one dog did find some explosives at some point. And that's what can happen. Most of those things can be identified as problems with sloppy training and sloppy handling. And so you got to be very careful about what it is you're doing. All right. I'm going to go ahead and show you a video. This is a dog. This is Bruno. Actually, Tony knows, I think Tony might know this dog. Tony Villalobos might know this dog. I'm not sure. Cueing the dog. Yes, cueing the dog. The handler change of body. Exactly. I talk about cueing. I can't tell you. I testified in over 100 cases now. And I would say cueing is probably 25% of the issues that I bring up in court, that the dog only did what he did on this video because the handler cued him, because it's obvious. When I see it, it's like a home run hitter, like a Hank Aaron sees a baseball, like a beach ball. So when I'm watching videos, when I see a handler cue, I just go, it's obvious to me. The hardest thing for me to do is tell a civilian that the handler is cueing. They'll go, oh no, the dog did. No, the handler cued. You can see the dog's actually looking at him, like waiting. The dog is walking along around the car, looking at him, waiting for the cue. I mean, that's pretty obvious to most people, but some people don't see it. Did they have access to or use the same weights of odor? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that too. Yeah, that's really, really good. Hey, Larry, nice to see you. And so I'm going to go ahead and show a video. This is Bruno. Bruno, it was a narcotics detection dog. I could take this dog anywhere. We used to fly places and give demos and that kind of stuff. But that doesn't make him different than any other dog that we train for narcotics. It's just a dog. This is our the way we train, the way we work. And that is, when you tell the dog to start searching, you stay out of it. Allow your dog to search and try to not get involved unless you really have to. In other words, if the dog gets distracted, you're going to see in the beginning, the dog gets visually distracted. So Bruno's coming around the driver's side. The Bruno's coming because the truck's facing in. So the dog comes around the driver's side right at the beginning of the search, and you see the dog go off into the parking lot, and he sees a leaf on the ground, right? So he is visually distracted, which happens. Every dog has something they get distracted from at some point during a search. Sometimes they never do, and not never do, but not on a search. Not every search will they get distracted, but quite often, either a distraction of odor, a distraction of sight, and a distraction from hearing. They'll hear something like Velcro from a pocket. They'll hear maybe what they think is a tennis ball bouncing on the ground, or the sound of a package being opened up where their treats come from. That's something that something they heard, and that will cause a distraction. In this case, it's a visual distraction, and you'll see me redirect the dog back to the car. Once the dog starts sniffing, I get back out of the search, right? It's the dog's job to search. It's not my job to help him search. If I have to help my dog search, then we have some problems, right? It's a problem, right? If I'm having to tap on stuff to get the dog to go up, and what you'll see is the dog goes up on his own. Why? Because the dog was trained to sniff properly. This important aspect that I need you to keep in mind is that you are the one who teaches the dog to sniff and locate the source. He has to learn through repetition to learn how to sniff a vehicle, learn how to sniff packages and parcels, learn how to sniff a building, learn how to do those things because you want to get out of it, right? Some handlers are never taught to get out of it. They think that because in the beginning they teach their dog by tapping on top of the hood, that's what you always have to do. No. You're teaching the dog in the beginning by tapping on the hood, but once the dog learns to go on the hood, he should do it on his own. Yeah, that shouldn't carry on for the 6 years you're with your dog. Now, sometimes you have to do it because the dog got distracted or is somehow missing it and you're not sure why he's missing it, but maybe at some point you want to get up there. As long as you do it once and then back off and allow the dog to do it on his own, then you're doing it properly. And we'll show you that here. So here's a real quick search. This is from several years ago. The dog has passed away. He's a great, great dog. I had so much fun with this dog. He wasn't even my dog. He was somebody else's dog, but I would borrow him to do demonstrations and borrow him to take him to Washington, D.C., where we did after a Supreme Court hearing, we did a sample search and sniff to teach people the press and stuff. So we used to travel all over the place doing stuff. So here is Bruno, and I'm going to make it big here. And so stand by. So this is, and I may stop it and come back and, well, you know what? I'll have it run through the first time and then I will come back and talk about a few things. Good boy. Very good. Okay. Actually, I'm going to bring this back up again. There we go. So do you see right there where I stopped it, where I see we sniffing that crack? That's not actually a seam there. That is actually a, what do you call it? Like, it's just like a design, for the door, for either, wind resistance or lack, or air streaming the vehicle. But the dog is sniffing it because to him, it appears to be a seam, but he's sniffing it just fine. Let me go ahead and push play here. And we're going to go through some of this here really quick. And so as he's sniffing there and following that line, you see that? Following that line, because the dog has learned by sniffing cracks and crevices, and watch him go up here. Watch him follow that. Look at that, perfectly. Follow that seam. Am I telling him to do that? No, we trained him that that's how you find odor. And see him stick his tongue out. He's tasting the odor in the air. He's trying to find it. And you see he goes up on his own, scratching my truck, the little bastard. And now he's getting onto the hood to try to smell, is it there? He finds a sneeze in the door. And now you're going to see him smell the air, right? You'll see the air coming up here. Watch him go up and smell the air, trying to find it. Where is it? And his head actually turns towards the odor, but maybe the mirror there. See, the mirror maybe blocks the odor, so now he loses the odor and turns right. Do you see how all this kind of works? And when you watch it in slow motion, you can see that there's features on the vehicle. There's features maybe in the environment that cause the dog to lose odor for a second. And I truly believe, after watching this video, I don't know how many 100 times maybe, because I give demonstrations all the time using this video, is that I believe that mirror sticking outside the vehicle blocked the odor for a second. That's what caused him to lose it. Now he hits the front of the vehicle. He's now going to take himself back. You see mouth kind of open because dogs smell through their mouth and their nose. He goes back up again. Somehow the odor must be traveling up. You see his head twisting again. The odor is grabbing his nose and taking him back. You can see my mouth is closed. I'm not talking to him. I'm not saying anything to him. And he goes back to the seam where the source of the odor is coming out, because the odor is inside the door panel of my truck. It's cocaine in this case. And the dog smells the seam, smelling the source of the odor. That's where it comes out of the vehicle at strongest. And he's concentrating, and you're going to see him lick his lips right there. His tongue came out. Do you see that? He tastes it on his nose. Now he turns and faces me. Some purists will think, no, the dog should stay on the seam. Whatever. It's up to you. And now the dog sits, giving me the trained behavior, and I reward. All right. That was cool. I love seeing his mouth open. And so do you see how that works? And so that's the thing you want to maintain. By staying out of it in a training search, even though I know where it's at, by staying out of it the best that I possibly can, only directing him that one time when he went to go get that leaf on the ground in the parking lot. I don't know if you could see it, but there was a leaf sitting there. He visually saw it and wanted to go over there and sniff it. But only getting involved when necessary and backing off. I'm not using my mouth. I'm not saying, what do you got, buddy? Show me. Where is it? Find it, buddy. Find it, Rhett. Right? None of that stuff, because what ends up happening is we now begin to insert ourselves in the search. And that is one of the last things you do. So this is really one of them. I spent a lot of time on this because I think it's maybe one of the most important things when it comes to influencing a dog and training your dog, that you begin to insert yourself in there, and now the dog begins to depend on you, and he's looking to you for direction. The dog will get lost and confused, and you want to make sure that the dog stays focused. All right, I got a bunch of X's from some Facebook user there. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe loving me. Maybe it's hugs. Is an X hugs? I don't remember if an X is hugs or an O's kisses, or I don't know. And then we got this one. I'm not sure what that is either. All right, so let's see. I always try to be super careful with my sports scent work dogs, and try not to help them ever. Good. They do sometimes cue off of me. I can lean on something while are on or off leash at home, so they think it could be there and will search the area, but they will not alert. Good. That's really, really good. Shares the owner of Bruno, and I told you I didn't know her. Shares the one who owned Bruno, and then there was an owner previous, or not an owner, but a handler assigned to Bruno earlier, is still being a hero. I miss my dog. Yeah. So that's she's the one who owned the dog, so she can confirm. Hey, Chris, nice to see you over at Find It Canine Detection. All right. So I hope that all made sense. It really is one of the most, especially if you've selected the dog properly, the dog has been trained properly, the dog's certified, the dog knows the trained odors. The way that their sniffer appears to be broken is that you have now inserted yourself. You have now caused some issues that are getting in the way. Stagnant training is another thing. So what can end up happening is and I'm going to use stagnant training in the sense that you just do training in your garage, for instance, or if you're a police dog handler, you guys go to the city yard all the time, because it's easy, right? You just go to the city yard because it's the city owns it. You don't have to do any work of trying to find a tow yard that will let you come and search, or any kind of manufacturing company, or a furniture building, or even a store after hours, and search there. It's a little bit of work, but we used to have it was really important. Every handler at Anaheim Police Department was tasked with finding places to train, so that we always had a new place to train, and we had to be creative in our training to set up different kinds of training. You do not want your training to become stagnant, because if your dog is always, after training, certification, and some good solid search in the beginning, if you now become stagnant and you begin the bad habit of training in the same place all the time, your dog will be really good at a city yard search, and the dog will know the city yard. And once you leave that environment and try to go somewhere else where now there's noises that he doesn't recognize, smells that he doesn't recognize, items that he's never sniffed before, that kind of stuff, you're going to have problems. Your dog who's perfect at the city yard now suddenly is not so perfect at a tow yard that he's never been before, or a residence that he's never been before, where there's a bird in a cage, maybe a hamster running on a wheel, maybe the air conditioning suddenly pops on, or there's maybe a baby there that has dirty diapers in the trash can, or a diaper can that has like 15, 30 diapers in it, right? And now you're trying to search, and the dog goes, well, what's that smell? And the dog goes, I want to go see that smell. And you can't get your dog to focus. Why? Because he's so used to searching an environment where he knows everything, that now you're trying to search an environment where he knows nothing. Nothing is recognizable. And now the dog is a dog. His brain gets in the way. He's like, man, I smell some dirty diapers. I want to check those things out. I smell, the hamster. I smell a bird. And now he hears the wheel, wee, 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 and now he can't search. One time I had a it was a rat terrier or a Jack Russell. I can't remember which one it was. One of the two. It doesn't matter because they both love rats, right? And so this dog was awesome. The dog could find, and I think the dog's still alive, as a matter of fact, the dog could find the odor, the trained odor. They could find the trained odor. Sorry, wrong thing here. I'm going to put this back up. The dog could find the imprinted odor like nobody's business. But you put a rat in the environment and he's done. There was nothing, absolutely nothing that you could do to get the dog back on task if he heard a rat or a mouse in the wall of the environment that you were searching. This showed itself every so often. You know, we'd be searching a warehouse and for bed bugs, and a rat would go across the, this huge warehouse, and the rat would go across the ground, and all the dog had to do was hear it. He didn't have to see it, and you were done. There was nothing you were going to do to get that dog to begin searching again for bed bugs. Why? Because the rats to a rat dog or Jack Russell Terrier is so high on the dog's priority list and the toy is under it, right? And so that thing was we're never going to get over that, and we tried a couple of times, and we just finally said that's that dog's limitation. So you either have to make sure that you don't get stagnant in your training, that you're finding all these locations to find out one of two things: that you can overcome the thing that caused your dog distractions. You finally get your dog to ignore dirty diapers because now it's normal in the environment, and now the dog begins to ignore it. I've talked about bouncing a tennis ball. You have all of your handlers that are joining you for training and give them a tennis ball, and you just have them bounce a tennis ball while you're doing your search. At some point, many dogs will begin to understand that that's simply part of the environment and will begin to ignore it. The only time he can play with the ball is when he finds the odor, and that's the tennis ball he gets, not the one that's being bounced by Fred or George or Missy. Who names their kid Missy? That's a weird name. And then pretty soon that becomes part of the environment. And now you've taken what could be a stagnant environment, but you've added some excitement to it by having people bounce a tennis ball, and you train your dog to get past that. Now, the other thing that you can learn is your dog won't get past it. All right. So I said there's two things, right? You either learn that you can train your dog past the thing that distracts them, or you learn that you learn what your dog's limitation is. Like, so I learned that the dog was it zero? Or it might have been it might have been Uno. I think it was actually Uno. That dog's limitation was rats. And there was nothing that we were going to do to get that dog past that distraction. So some dogs, many dogs, almost every dog has some type of limitation, and you're going to find out what that limitation was. All right. So my police dog at Anaheim Police Department, his limitation was climbing chain link fence. He, one time during training at the place we trained in Riverside, he got his toenail stuck in a chain link fence, in the cross part of a chain link fence. Got his toenail stuck in there, and he couldn't get it out. And ever since that day, I had to throw him over chain link fences. So we'd be running after a suspect, and as I'm running, I would gather the leash, scoop him up, and I would toss him over chain link fences because I knew there was no hope that he was going to go over the chain link fence. He would go over cinder block walls that were 6 feet, 7 feet high, but a chain link fence, never. That was his limitation. Right? Malinois crash, and they climb and they go over and they go up. So completely different animal. All right. So stagnant training can cause your dog, who was once in training and certification fantastic, appear to have lost their sniffer because you're not varying your training locations. All right, let me see what this has to do with your handy. Is this being taped? It's the replay. You can watch the replay, John Martinez. Just wherever you're watching this, just wait till I'm done, and then a couple minutes after I'm done, you can start it again. The replay will stay there. It's on YouTube. It's on Twitter. It'll stay on YouTube too. All right. That's it. Is dog focusing so important in drug detection dogs? Is that a question? Is dog focusing so important in drug detection dogs? I may answer your question if I'm understanding your question correctly. I might be answering your question in just 1 second. All right. Poor training aid management. This is another issue that comes up. It's hard in the court cases for me to identify whether this is an issue or not, because I never get to see their training aids. But if you get into a bad habit of using the same training aids over and over again and never change them out, with bed bugs, you almost have to, because at some point they're going to die, and then you have to get new bed bugs and new vials and all that kind of stuff. But you can still run into problems with poor training aid management. One of the things that you can do with training aid management that's really easy to fix, but most often is not fixed, whether it's narcotics, explosives, or even bed bugs, is that you always keep them in a plastic baggie. Right. And so when you're hiding narcotics and bed bugs and explosives, if you're hiding them in that baggie, and I'm using this as an example, you can say this about whatever container, it could be Tupperware, that you're always hiding them with that thing. And this is common with narcotics dogs, very common with narcotics dogs, is that every time you're hiding a training aid, there's always a baggie with it. You now have a dog that's trained to find, and I'm going to use marijuana, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and plastic baggies. Because why? The most prevalent odor, because you often keep marijuana in a plastic baggie, you often keep methamphetamine in a plastic baggie, you often keep cocaine in a plastic baggie, and if I didn't say methamphetamine already, or heroin, I forget which one I didn't say earlier, is that they're all in plastic baggies. So actually, plastic baggies become the more prevalent odor in a narcotics dog than the narcotic odors. Because every time they search and locate something and they get rewarded, that plastic baggie is in that mix. It becomes an imprinted odor that the dog is trained to find. And I've proven this over and over again. I will hide a box in a room, in a building, in a warehouse that's full of plastic baggies. And one day I did it for the Orange County Canine Association back in the day in a building that no longer exists here by my house. And again, I think we had something like 40 or 60 dogs. And there was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 80% of the dogs alerted to and indicated, positively indicated on the box with plastic baggies. Again, why? Because of poor training aid management. What you have to do is take that training aid and vary the container that you hide it in. You have to trade out. If you're only training with a certain type of methamphetamine, say a brown, just say heroin. So a brown heroin, but never tar heroin, your dog may get very good at finding brown heroin, but will never find tar heroin. Some dogs will, some dogs won't, because the dog has never been confronted with searching for, alerting to, indicating to tar heroin and getting rewarded for it. And so your poor management is in that you've not varied the different types of heroin, the different types of methamphetamine, crystal as opposed to non-crystal methamphetamine, cocaine that may be cut in different substances. And so varying the training aids, if like in the case of narcotics, can be manufactured differently. You want the dog to find that primary odor, which is the actual narcotic, the illegal substance, which is the cocaine, and then vary the other odors that the dog may be searching for and having imprinted. You're trying to find this thing, imprinted. All right. So you want to make sure that is it dealt with in training aid management. All right. So I covered a couple of things there. Plastic baggies are usually a big issue. In bed bugs, it's the containers, right? A dog can find bed bugs in the environment when they're in the container, but you may have a dog that can't find bed bugs if there's no container. Why? Because the container is always present. And so this is a very tricky thing that I've taught many classes on, that in the bed bug world, this becomes an issue. The dogs sometimes have difficulty finding real bed bugs in the real world. Why? Because they're not in a plastic container. Excuse me. COVID-19. And so my sons used to say Corona. And so I don't have it, by the way. And so that's, again, poor training aid management. How do you deal with it? Well, there's a way of dealing with that, but that's one of the things you need to be understood. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about today, because this isn't all of them, these are the primary four that I want to talk about, is the dog's limitations. And then again, we talked about the rat dog's limitations, or the Jack Russell Terrier's limitations. But your dog may just have a limitation in that it can't search certain environments. If you did not test the dog thoroughly, if you did not make sure the dog that you selected or your trainer selected is a dog that can search in all types of environments, minus loud noises, slick floors, low lighting, and that kind of stuff. So when we test a dog, we quite often, when I go to Slovakia or Northern Ireland to test my dogs, if I go there personally, I make sure that I stay there for a week to test the dogs for about 4 days. So I take the dogs in as many environments. I have a metal clipboard that while they're searching, I'll drop on the ground. I will move things around. Again, we just do everything I can to make sure that I put the dog through as many different types of situations, realistic situations, to make sure this dog that I'm selecting can overcome all those things. Search on stairs, search on slick floors, search in low lighting, search over unsteady flooring. There's another word for it. I can't think of it. A ground, right? That it can go over like sometimes we'll take pallets and we'll put a rock under two of the corners, opposite corners. caddy corner, right? And so, and then we'll put those all over the place. So then we make the dog walk as the pallet's kind of rocking back and forth to make sure the dog doesn't pee on himself or have diarrhea, right? And the dog actually will walk over it as he's trying to do a search or in the middle of a search. The dog doesn't have to actually find it while he's walking on the teeter-tottering pallet, but you want to make sure the dog will go on it, right? And actually walk on it. There's all kinds of videos on my YouTube channel that shows us doing that kind of thing. And so as much as I can, I try to make sure that that's, something we get the dog over. Some of the unusual things that have come across that even in the testing we didn't find, one of them was a dog that we brought back that didn't like the movement of cloth, like a flag, or the skirting around a table at a at a convention or something like that, or the long curtains that go to the ground. If this dog would search almost anything, but if he saw the curtain move, man, he was out of there. The dog would crap his pants and pee himself. It was the craziest thing. We had a police dog in Anaheim that we didn't know that we tested. The dog did everything really well. And one day we're doing a demo at a school, and we had a mic that had a cord that went to the amplifier, right? And what I did is, as I was talking to move the line out of the way, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was talking, okay, kids, we're gonna have the dog. He's gonna do a search for some narcotics, or he's gonna bite somebody, whatever he's gonna do. I think he was actually gonna bite somebody. So this big, strong police dog who was gonna bite somebody, I took the cord and went like this to move it out of the way. You know how you do that with a hose or you do that with a cord. I did that, and that dog was gone. The dog just took off, and we couldn't get the dog back in the building. We never would have known, right? That wasn't something we tested the dog for. You would have think the dog having been around leashes and long lines and that kind of stuff wouldn't have been an issue. I don't know what it was about the microphone cord on that day. The dog's name was actually Bruno too. No, Baron. The dog. No. Bruin. The dog's name was Bruin. And the only reason I'm telling you is because I'm not going to say anymore. Okay, so Bruin took off. It was the craziest thing. So there's some things that are going to be your dog's limitations, right? So if this dog had to search a guitar center with a microphone, where all the microphones are kept, you might not be able to search that room, because that dog may not shoot, there's all kinds of microphone cords in here. I am not searching this room. So you can search every room in that building, but not the microphone room. Why? Because we know that dog doesn't like the microphone cords. And this is an example, right? So your dog may have some limitations, and you may not know that until you get into the situation and go, wait, is he broken? No, that's just his limitation. And you didn't know it until you were confronted with that situation. One last one is that we took a bunch of bed bugs, 5 dogs. I was asked to bring a bunch of dogs to LA, to a 6-story apartment complex in Los Angeles, downtown LA. And we all split floors, right? And then there was a little bit of crossover, the way that I set up the searches, so that some dogs could search the red flagged rooms. We'd have 2 different dogs search the same rooms that were red flagged. Some of the rooms we only had 1 dog search because it wasn't necessary to search the rooms that had never had any reports of bed bugs, and they were so far away from the red flagged rooms that they really weren't that big of a concern. But the ones that were red flagged, we wanted dogs to cover both. And so you wouldn't believe, on a 6-story apartment building, how many apartments have smoke detectors where people are so lazy that they can't change the dying or dead batteries. You would not believe. It was crazy. I think there had to be like 7 or 8. I mean, that seems like a lot. Like, how can you sit there all day long, listen to that beep, beep? So they were everywhere. So, and there may have even been more now that I'm thinking about it, because this dog could not search any of those apartments that had a dead battery in the smoke detector, or a low battery in a smoke detector. That dog would not go in. The dog, as soon as they heard a beep, the dog would try to get out of the room and it would pull away from the handler to get out of the room. That one single beep. So there's some things that your dog's gonna have some limitations. You may not find out. We had no idea. We'd taken that dog to search trains. That dog had searched movie theaters and a bunch of apartments and houses. But on this day, there was enough where she would have to call and say, hey, I don't know if she's even watching. She may or may not be watching right now, but she would say, hey, I can't search. Can somebody else come search this apartment because my dog won't go in? There's a smoke detector in there that's beeping. So there's some crazy things. So there's some limitations that have to do with this. So I hope this has been helpful. We had about 4 things that we talked about, and that was a lot. We went on for almost an hour talking about those things. I know it's been an hour because my children are getting restless and looking at me like, hey, how long are you going to be on that thing? And so let's see. I answered that question. Is dog focusing so important? Oh, I think I covered that. Hopefully I did. The focus, right? If the dog is distracted by a rat, if the dog is distracted by food, if the dog is distracted by a diaper, if the dog is distracted by the sound of the beeping going on and not focusing, then of course, yes, your dog needs to be thinking, I need to find that odor so I can play with my toy. It needs to be so strong. I didn't cover the selection process. Hopefully who's watching this and really getting anything out, they understand that your dog's desire for the reward has to be so strong. The desire for the reward, this bottom thing, this reward has to be everything to this dog. It has to overcome rats. It has to overcome diapers. It has to overcome a steak when it's hungry. It has to overcome a whole lot of things. The only thing that they rarely overcome is water. If your dog is thirsty, a reward is second to most often in a dog that's really thirsty, water. But other than that, the reward has to be stronger than anything else. And so that causes the focus, right? Because your dog's desire for that thing is so strong that the dog will overlook and ignore its nose, olfactory system, and the things that it hears and that kind of stuff to find that thing. It will ignore a rat running on a wheel in a cage inside the kid's room that you're searching, right? If that is so strong. If it's not, then that again becomes one of your dog's limitations. And so the focus on that thing to get rewarded for that thing is really, really important. So I hope that answered your question. Larry, I got to go. See you next time. Nice. All right, my friends, I hope this has been helpful. And again, all of you that were on the very first one that didn't go that well. This will also be on my podcast. If you haven't been on iHeartRadio or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just type in Andy Falco. You'll see I have 3 podcasts. One of them is a dog training podcast. One of them is the Andy Falco Show. And another one is a wellness podcast. Subscribe to all 3. You'll have fun. All right, my friends. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And thanks for watching. Make sure and share and subscribe if you can. I do these shows maybe about once or twice a month, just so you know. All right, that'll be it. I'm trying to find my my kids are waiting for the music. All right, my friends. Talk to you later. Bye.